So just the other day, I made a video talking about the fact that Google is about to have to pay out a whopping $700 million because they were found to be engaging in anti-competitive practices within their Google Play Store. And now it looks like Google's going to be paying out maybe an even larger sum of money. That's because a lawsuit that was filed all the way back in the year 2020 alleged that Google's Chrome browser, even when you were in incognito mode, was still collecting data and that they had not made that apparent enough to users. So what's the problem? Well, someone goes into incognito mode, they think no data is being collected, but indeed data is still being collected. You're not actually all that incognito. Now, this lawsuit, like I said, was filed back in 2020, and just the other day, we're at the end of 2023, they have apparently reached some sort of out-of-court settlement. Now, they were seeking $5 billion in damages. This is a class action lawsuit, so that would be distributed out among many millions of people. So we don't know what this settlement is going to be for. Maybe it's $5 billion, probably not $5 billion, right? Maybe it's less than that, but it's going to be quite a bit of money. So guys, what I want to do quickly is let's kind of talk this through. Like, what are we saying when we say that Google is collecting data when you are in incognito mode? Maybe a good place to start is, what does incognito mode do? What is it actually meant to do? Well, if you look into it, basically all incognito mode says it's going to do is it's going to prevent local browsing history from being stored on your device. It's going to, I believe, it blocks your cookies as well. So you sign into a website and you'll be signed in, but whenever you leave that website, those cookies should be ejected. The history is ejected. Nothing is retained locally on the device. But that's the problem, is it only affects your device. If you are browsing the web and a website or your ISP or your system administrator, any of these types of things, not local to your device, they want to track what you're doing in some way, they can absolutely still do that. There's nothing about incognito mode that's going to prevent that. Now, I also mentioned that Google tried to have this dismissed, and the reasoning for wanting this dismissed is that they say that they warn users when you use incognito mode about what's going to happen. Maybe you're asking yourself, where, how do they warn us? Where do they tell us that? Well, it's like one of those agreements you have to like scroll and then say you've read it and nobody reads it. This thing pops up every time you use incognito mode, and I don't know that anybody has actually read this. Chrome won't save the following information: your browsing history, cookies and site data, information entered into forms. Your activity might still be visible to websites you visit, your employer or your school, which would be in that system administrator type thing, your internet service provider. They do indeed warn you every time you use this that these things might still be being tracked. When you browse the web and you see a Google ad shown up there, all of this stuff is tracking you in some way. And the Chrome browser has nothing built in that's going to block that. And when you're in incognito mode, nothing's going to block that either. Honestly, I think what this really shows is how little people understand about how tracked you are being. When you're going to websites, we don't instinctively think about all the data that they are mining from us, but they're tracking how long we are on those websites. They're tracking things you type into search boxes on websites, interactions with every element of these websites. All of this stuff is, of course, being tracked. IP address, your device type, the information about your device, screen resolution, your browser version, all of these things are being tracked. And then they can kind of combine all this stuff to create this profile of this particular user. And again, incognito mode does not block any of that. If you want that stuff to be blocked, you need to be using either some extensions that will do that sort of thing, or maybe privacy-focused web browsers. I'm not an expert on this stuff, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you what extension, like, oh, use Brave browser because it, I don't know if it blocks all this stuff or not. I've used Brave in the past. Maybe it does. I've not really looked into it. But I can tell you that Chrome is not preventing this stuff. And why would it? Chrome is Google's browser. Google makes so much of its money from this sort of data mining stuff about people. They want to know what people want, what people are after, what they're doing on the internet, so that they can serve appropriate ads to you. That's how they make so much of their money. So just to kind of tie this up in a bow, incognito mode only affects data stored on your computer, not data about what you're doing stored on other devices, stored out there in the series of tubes that is the internet. Maybe the most like overly simplistic way to look at it is if I go into incognito mode and then sign into my Gmail account and send some emails and watch some YouTube videos, Google's gonna know all of that stuff. Even when I close the browser and it kicks out of the history and all the cookies and all that stuff, Google still knows that I did all of those things. So now just understand that every website is tracking you in similar ways to that, and maybe you'll understand. Now, I do find it interesting that Google has agreed to pay something. They've just settled this out of court. Maybe they just don't want the bad publicity. Maybe this is some sort of an admission that they've not done a good enough job to like educate people on the risks of just being on the internet, how tracked you are. Maybe the wording on that tab is going to get a bit more clear. Maybe they're going to talk about, deeper ways, more detailed explanations about what exactly is going on. Hard to say, but definitely something worth being aware of when you're on the internet. Even in incognito mode, you are still being tracked by pretty much everything. All you're doing is making it so that when the other person that uses your computer goes on your computer and looks at your history, what you've been up to when you've had your fedora and sunglasses on won't be in your history. That's pretty much all you're doing. So guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe for more content like this, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.